All right,
There you go.
it's muted again.
I'm just playing.
Okay.
Is it gonna work or not?
Can't say I got suspense. Good evening and welcome to the regular council meeting of May 11th. We'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. Before I start, I just want to recognize that it's National Nursing Week. So I'd like to thank all the nurses in Beaufort Delta for the outstanding service and a debt of gratitude, I guess, for the work they did during the pandemic. They're greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Item number 2 is the adoption of the agenda. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Merrill, seconded by Councillor Devlin. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item 3, declaration of conflict of interest or pecuniary interest. None. Item 4, delegations, presentations, or petitions. 4.1, we had the RCM3 report on Monday. 4.2 was supposed to be tonight, a presentation by the Northwest Territories Power Corporation.
They're on
He's on
the
screen.
Okay, so they're not going to be here.
no,
Okay, then.
they're on. No,
He's
no,
on
no,
the screen
they're on
behind
the
you, Clarence.
screen. They're-
Behind you.
Okay.
I thought they were going to be here.
Ah.
So.
Corey, can you hear us okay?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Where's his sound coming out of?
Seems to be your
Kristen
computer.
overrides it.
Would you like me to try again to see if you can hear me okay?
No. We'll just.
Linda, do you want to try to see if it's better for you?
Speaker.
Okay, try it now.
Hey, can you hear me now? Testing,
No.
testing.
Not very loud.
Grant, Tony suggested maybe putting your mic to the speaker.
Well, it's supposed to be.
I can hear you folks just fine. That's
Okay.
probably not the best thing if I'm the one giving the presentation though.
Try it now.
How about now? Can you hear me now? Testing.
That's better.
Right on.
Is it testing? That's okay?
Great.
Thank you.
She might be able to. It should be good, Corey. I don't know if you want to try and share your screen if you have the presentation or anything. It's up to you.
I could stream it if that works for you, Mr. Mayor. That's no problem of mine. I think I can try. I don't know if I have the capability here though, but if not, we can just follow along and I can tell you which page I'm at because you do have a hard copy of the presentation in front of you.
If you try to share your screen. Down the bottom.
I think we just follow along.
If you bring the presentation up, we can see your screen.
See all my emails too. Are you able to see that okay?
Yeah,
Yep.
Okay, if it's okay, Mr. Mayor, I can carry along.
Yeah, it's fine.
Great, thank you. Thank you, your worship and members of council. I'm pleased to be here tonight and to provide you with a high-level overview of the general rate application process and talk about the key factors impacting electricity rates in your community and in other parts of the Northwest Territories. I am joined by Belinda Whitford, our Chief Operating Officer, who will deliver part of the presentation. This presentation to council is intended to help provide a basic information about the general rate application. It is not intended to act as an alternative to the formal GRA process, which is led by the NWT Public Utility Board. Following the presentation, we'd be happy to take questions, but may be limited in terms of what we can say in some responses due to the GRA process that is already underway. The presentation will cover a number of topics, excuse me, including the GRA process, the role of the GNWT, future plans, proposed rates by zone, a recent PUB decision on interim rates, residential bill impacts for using winter consumption, and then Belinda is going to talk about rate pressures and a little bit of a rate pressure analysis. Then I'll finish up giving an update on the Inuvik Wind project and the path forward. GRA process, what is it? A general rate application is a process by which NTPC applies to the NWT Public Utilities Board to change how much customers pay for power or make other changes to the way we conduct business. The PUB is an independent quasi-judicial agency of the government of the Northwest Territories. It is responsible for the regulation of public utilities in the NWT. Public involvement in the GRA process is encouraged. I am aware that the town of Inuvik has registered as an intervener as part of the thermal generation communities, which includes the town of Norman Wells. As much as anything, a GRA is a public financial review of how NTPC spends the money it receives from customers to ensure that customers are receiving fair value for the rates they pay. In our application, NTPC has provided a detailed accounting of the anticipated costs to deliver power to customers across the NWT for the next 2 years. This includes items such as operating and maintenance costs, including labor, capital costs, cost of fuel, interest, and amortization. Based on those anticipated costs, NTPC has proposed rates that will recover sufficient revenue from customers to meet those costs. During the GRA, the PUB and interveners have the opportunity to ask detailed questions about NTPC's costs and spending plans, and all interveners are able to review the questions and comments provided by NTPC and others. At the end of the process, and after considering all the information received, the PUB will ultimately determine whether NTPC's costs are appropriate and accurate, and make a decision as to whether proposed rates should be accepted or revised. As mentioned, the GRA is a public process which provides an opportunity for interested parties to raise any questions or concerns they may have about how NTPC proposes to spend the revenue it receives through customer rates. Public participation is encouraged and helps ensure that the review process is thorough. Information about how the GRA process works and all other documentation related to the GRA can be found on the PUB's website at www.nwtpublicutilities.ca. One thing I do want to mention to Mayor and Council is the GRA process is a very formal process. The last time the PUB held a hearing for us was in 2017, and it's very, very formal. It was in one of the rooms in the Explorer Hotel, if you've been in that hotel, and it's really intimidating for customers to come in and have a conversation. So one of the things that when Belinda and I were in that review process 5 years ago now, we wanted to make sure that we're in front of certain town councils and certain stakeholders to have more of a collaborative discussion about our business. And that's Belinda was just up in your area just a couple of weeks ago and came in for a visit. I'm scheduled to be up in June again just to come in and say hi. I thank you for the opportunity to meet you virtually. With technology, we're always trying to spend our money as wisely as we possibly can, but I definitely want to come up in Inuvik. I do like it there, especially in June when the sun never goes down, which is quite nice right now as well. It's not possible to discuss electricity rates without noting the significant contributions of the government of the Northwest Territories, which helps to keep rates lower for residential and other customers. The GNWT is responsible for establishing energy policy. NTPC is responsible for delivering power to customers. Policy is based on government priorities. As our sole shareholder, the GNWT and NTPC are in alignment on energy policy. We have many of the same priorities, primarily keeping rates as low as possible, maintaining reliable electricity systems, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions to help achieve the targets established in the 2030 energy strategy. Governments pay higher electricity rates than other customer classes, helping mitigate against upward pressure on rates. One of the most notable ways in which the GNWT helps keep rates lower is through the Territorial Power Support Program, or TPSP. The GNWT established the TPSP to ensure that all NWT households can, with modest energy saving efforts, pay the same lower power rates as households in Yellowknife. From September 1st to March 31st, residential customers pay the Yellowknife rate on their first 1,000 kilowatt hours, and each additional kilowatt hour after that is based on the zone that the community is in. And I'll talk about the zone-based rates in a minute. From April 1st to August 31st, or the summer months, that threshold is down to 600 kilowatt hours instead of 1,000, but it still pays at the Yellowknife rate for that first 600 kilowatt hours. The TPSP does not apply to businesses or to residential customers in zones which rates are below the Yellowknife rate. And the only two communities currently that have rates lower than Yellowknife are Fort Smith and Fort Resolution, which are on the Tulston system. This is my favorite slide, just to say that. NTPC recognizes that rate increases cannot be the only solution to challenges facing the electricity sector in the Northwest Territories. Customers must see balanced efforts and a plan for the future in order to have confidence that their best interests are being considered. We have and we will continue to take steps to incorporate more renewable and lower cost options, such as the use of liquid natural gas in a generation mix in thermal communities. This includes building stronger partnerships with communities and Indigenous governments and Indigenous organizations. With additional financial support from the federal government and elsewhere, we can continue this trend. With working with the GNWT, we will continue to pursue federal funding. We are actively pursuing load growth opportunities in hydro zones, and I am cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to add new industrial customers in the coming years, which would help moderate electricity rates. NTPC has been successful in keeping our controllable costs at or below the rate of inflation over the past several years, and will continue to look for innovative ways to do so, despite the high period of inflation we are all experiencing. We will continue to strive to increase sales through electric heating, industrial customers, and electric vehicle charging stations. In addition to adding renewables to our generation mix, we are implementing a number of measures to reduce diesel consumption, such as the use of summer fuels in road communities, prioritizing engine efficiency in new purchases, and signing power purchase agreements with Indigenous governments and Indigenous organizations to access community-scale renewable generation. The availability of GNWT and federal funding helps to keep capital expenditures as low as possible, and will continue to pursue opportunities with available funding. We're also building enhanced estimating and project management capacity in the organization to improve our ability to deliver projects on time and on budget. We have worked very hard over the past several years to control our costs, to keep rate increases as low as possible. Generally speaking, we have kept most controllable costs at or below the rate of inflation. Unfortunately, a number of factors have more than offset the benefits received from our cost control efforts. Based on NTPC's current financial situation, the following is requested in front of the PUB. Rates that will collect $8 million additional revenue from electricity sales to reflect current costs of delivering electricity to customers. This works out to a 7.3% increase in revenue over 5 years. That's from 2018-19 to 2023-24. Base rates have not been adjusted since 2019. This works out to an average annual increase of 1.4%, which is below the rate of inflation for this period. Proposed new rates are based on our forecasted costs for 2022-23. We've asked the PUB to phase in rate increases over 2 years to spread that impact out to customers. Proposed rate increases to collect $8 million revenue will vary by zone, and we'll discuss about that later in this presentation. One thing that we are doing is we will start to see the financial and environmental benefits of the Inuvik Wind project in 2023-24, but we're reflecting that benefit now in this GRA. This will help minimize rate increases in the thermal zone. I want to talk a little bit about this rate zone mechanism because it is a little complicated. Prior to 2010, we had an item which is called community-based rates. So every community in the Northwest Territories paid its own rate. In 2010, the minister responsible for the NWT Public Utilities Board issued electricity rate policy guidelines, ordering that 4 rate zones be established for NTPC based on the primary generation source used in each community. This results in the structure we have today, with a snare zone, a Tallston zone, and a thermal zone, and a zone for Norman Wells. It's important to note the guidelines further indicated that Norman Wells should become part of the thermal zone in the future. The NTPC thermal zone consists of Covell Lake, Nahanni Butte, Sachs Harbor, Jean Marie River, Gamity, Polituck, Wrigley, Sigachik, Toledo, Watee, Delaney, Litzel Cay, Fort McPherson, Ulahooktuk, Fort Good Hope, Tuktoyaktuk, Fort Liard, Fort Simpson, and Aklavik and Inuvik. These are all communities who get their primary power from diesel or liquid natural gas, although there is also renewables added power to the local grid. This slide before you illustrates the proposed increases contained in the general rate application for the 3 zones and in Norman Wells. If accepted by the PUB, the snare and thermal zones will see an increase of 2.5% in each of the next 2 years. If accepted by the PUB, the Tallston zone and the Norman Wells will see larger increases as a result of factors we will discuss in a bit later. In total, the proposed rate increases will average 3.5% in 2022-23 and 3.6% in 2023-24. We have rounded the numbers in the presentation for the sake of simplicity. One step in the GRA process is that utilities are allowed to request interim rate increases before the review process is completed. NTPC requested interim rate increases consistent with the previous slide, 2.5% increase in the snare and thermal zones and 10% increases in the Tallston zone and in Norman Wells. In a decision released April 27th, the PUB approved an interim rate increase of 2.5% in all zones, including Norman Wells, effective May 1st. In the decision, the PUB indicated that NTPC needed confirmation from the GNWT that the original requested rate increases for Tallston Zone and Norman Wells are consistent with the rate policy guidelines that were issued by the GNWT in 2017. Over the coming weeks, NTPC will be consulting with the GNWT to address this matter, but will continue to move forward on the assumption that our approach is consistent with the 2017 policy direction, that the original rate increases are appropriate. At the end of the day, final approval and final rates will be determined by the PUB once it has considered all of the information it receives through the review process. This table shows the actual monthly bill impact of the average residential customer in each 3 rate zones and in Norman Wells during the winter months when bills tend to be at their highest. The table shows the impact if originally proposed rates are approved by the PUB. After the territorial power support is applied, where everyone pays the same rate as Yellowknife for their first 1,000 kilowatt hours, The snare and thermal zones, as well as Norman wells, see an approximate 3.5% increase over the next 2 years. Because customers in Fort Smith and Fort Resolution pay the lowest electricity rates in the Northwest Territories, the TPSP does not apply to residential customers. Based on the PUB decision on interim rates, which approved a rate increase of 2.5% for all rate zones effective May 1st, a monthly bill for a residential customer in Inuvik using 1,000 kilowatt hours in the winter months is $335.42, and a monthly bill for a customer in the summer months using 600 kilowatt hours would be $208.45. I will now ask Belinda to talk about some of the rate pressures. And Belinda, I'll just keep moving the slides forward if that's okay.
Sure, that's great. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Okay, so rate pressures. So I'm going to speak a little bit about rate pressures across the corporation, and then I'll target in on the thermal zone in particular. So there's a number of rate pressures that impact our costs. Operating costs are one of them, and that includes the cost of insurance. So as a utility, our cost of insurance has increased quite a bit. Being a utility these days is a pretty risky business. There have been a number of events in North America that have increased the cost of insurance. We also have other operating costs that are increasing, in particular in this post-COVID pandemic world. Costs for contractors and supplies are increasing quite a bit. Sales are declining. As our sales are declining, we still need a certain level of assets to serve those customers. So we have the cost of assets, the cost of operations to spread over a smaller number of sales. And so that is also putting pressure on our cost per kilowatt hour. Aging infrastructure. So aging infrastructure impacts our costs in two different ways. So not only it costs us more to maintain our assets, our older assets, it takes more time or effort to keep them running, but it also, we also need to replace them, and the cost of replacement is more than the cost of the old assets. Tied to what I mentioned earlier on insurance is climate change. So we're experiencing flooding in Hay River area. Also in the Mackenzie, we had a little bit of a flood situation in Fort Liard. Hopefully that's about it. But flooding, permafrost, issues with permafrost is becoming a big thing with our assets, as I'm sure with many other assets in the Inuvik region. So climate change is also increasing our costs to maintain our assets, but also to replace them and to ensure that they're working in good condition. Fluctuating fuel prices, we're all experiencing that at the pump when we go there. So it's no different from us, both on our diesel prices and the cost of LNG. And in some cases also our purchase power that we have, which all affect the thermal zone. Interest and amortization, Corey mentioned that, along with inflation, are also general rate pressures that impact us as a utility. So now I'm going to take those rate pressures and talk a little bit about each of the zones. So in Snare Yellowknife, our inflationary pressures, really general cost to operate, are rising. We have a number of hydro sites, and the cost for those, as well as environmental licensing costs, put pressures on our rates there. And we have a flat electricity demand in Yellowknife, so that also is adding to pressures. In Norman Wells and Tolston, we had significant pre-existing shortfalls. That's putting pressures on those zones. And then in the thermal zone, investment in new plants offset by increased generation from renewables or LNG, which really decreases our sales. That is where we're seeing rate pressures in that zone. And I'm going to speak a little bit more in detail on that zone. So in the thermal zone, we see our costs for maintenance. Three things are really driving it. Are driving sort of our operating costs. Maintenance, that has to do with those aging assets that I mentioned. It's costing more to get contractors to replace those assets. It's harder to find pieces to maintain those assets and to even replace them with. So replacing that aging infrastructure, that's also getting more expensive. And then the increased cost of diesel and LNG are the three pieces that are driving the operating costs. Offsetting those operating costs, though, we do have some things that are working to decrease our costs, and Corey spoke a little bit about this. One is federal funding. So in the thermal zone in particular, we have the Inuvik Wind project. We have a new plant in Sax Harbor that is funded by federal funding. Fort Simpson, we're proposing an LNG plant there that is supported by federal funding, and we have a new plant going into Litsuke, which also has federal funding supporting that. So we do have those costs which are offsetting the increasing cost of operation and infrastructure. And in addition, Corey mentioned this earlier as well, Inuvik Wind, once that asset gets in place, it will replace a significant number of liters of diesel fuel. 3 million is what the initial estimates were. So with requiring less diesel fuel to operate our system, we will have lower costs. And the cost for that replacement of diesel fuel has already been built into this GRA. So that is a benefit to customers that they're seeing in advance of that asset coming online. And now I will turn the presentation back to Corey. Oh, sorry, I should mention that in your slide deck, you will see slides for Norman Wells, Snare, and Tallston Zone. And I'm not going to speak to those, but if you have any questions later about those slides, I can speak to that. Now I'm going to hand it back to Corey.
Thanks, Belinda. We're going to close off our presentation to you. Just a big discussion about a significant project that's going in your areas, the Inuvik Wind project. We have a cute little graph there as we transition decarbon in our economy and our generation mix. The Inuvik Wind project is a key initiative under the GWT's 2030 energy strategy and NTPC strategic plan. The physical size of the structure and that will be constructed later this year is quite mind-boggling. The approximate dimensions of the turbine are each blade is 67 meters long or 220 feet. From the bottom of the ground to the hub, that's the middle section that you see there. That's 80 meters or 262 feet. And the maximum height when that blade is straight up in the air, it'll be 492 feet. Sometimes that's hard, unless it's hard for me anyways. But as a comparison, the Center Square Mall, if you're ever in Yellowknife, that's 17 stories and that's 197 feet, which is the tallest building in Northern Canada. So that means the maximum height of this turbine will be 2.5 times the current highest structure. So it is quite large. The project will potentially displace up to 3 million liters of diesel and offset approximately 6,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions annually when it's up and running. Reduction in diesel consumption comes with financial benefits for customers, as those savings will start to be built into rates during this GRA, and this will continue into the future. Replacing fossil fuel generation with renewable energy is better for the environment and supports the battle to combat climate change. An additional benefit project is there will be economic opportunities for local and regional businesses while the project is underway. Several of the key components, including the turbine blades and turbine base, arrived in the Northwest Territories last year, and they're being stored in Hay River. And later this spring, these components will be loaded on a barge and delivered to Inuvik. Construction and commissioning of the wind turbine will occur this year and will begin to contribute power to the grid in late 2020 or early 2023. This will be a very exciting period for the Northwest Territories Power Corporation and for electricity customers in your community. To wrap this up, it is important to remind you that the GWT is NTPC's sole shareholder. And so our relationship with them is critically important. We need to be on the same page. We share many of the same priorities, and we will continue to work together to moderate electricity rates, maintain and improve the reliability systems, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions from electricity generation to support the fight against climate change. The GRA process will move forward over the next several months, and there will be a great deal of information that will be provided by interveners as well as the Northwest Territories Power Corporation. Once the PUB has had the chance to review all of the input, we'll make a decision about whether NTPC's proposed rates in each of the zones are justified by NTPC's costs to deliver power in those zones. There's a lot of work to do over this period, and we're committed to helping members of the PUB, interveners, and all of our customers gain a better understanding of this rate review setting process. And while this is all going on, we'll be advancing the Inuvik Wind project. This concludes our presentation to you tonight. I hope that some of your questions have already been answered, and we're open to further conversation. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I will now stop sharing, if that's okay. I think I did that. Good, I didn't blow it up.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm going to open it up to questions if council has any. Councilor Gallants.
Thank you for the presentation. I guess my question is, you mentioned possible savings for our region with the wind project. Have there been any calculations done on what those savings would actually mean for residents here in the Inuvik and the region? Do you know?
Thank you for that question. Those savings we mentioned were approximately 3 million liters of fuel, and that's already being included in this GRA. So that's $3 million that, if it's $1 a liter, which we all know, hopefully it comes back to $1 a liter at one point in time in the near future. But if not, this year, if we didn't have that incorporated, our costs to provide service would be approximately $3 million or maybe $4.5 million more. So those savings have already been included in this GRA.
I guess I'm asking for a bit of a deeper dive. Have those savings actually been calculated on a rately basis for the residents, or is that a bit premature to do that right now?
Yeah, sorry, the savings haven't started yet because we're still burning our diesel and not liquid natural gas because the turbine's not constructed yet. So when it's in commissioning, and we're looking at about a year from now when it's in full operation, that's when we'll use less diesel and less liquid natural gas. But those savings have already been incorporated in what these rate increases that you see in front of you today. What we can do though is we can calculate anything that I'm talking about would be theoretical in nature. It would be more of a, if we did not do this project, this is what your rate increase would be otherwise. Sometimes I find that's difficult for customers to appreciate and understand. I know when I talk to my parents about it, and longtime Northerners, that's kind of my litmus test when I'm talking about that. It's kind of hard to discuss that, but those calculations can be done for sure, to show if that project wasn't done, what the impact would be on customers' rates.
Answers your question. Any other questions? Councilor Devlin.
I thank you very much for your presentation. I'm just wondering, is the GRA the correct area to talk about the possibility of increasing our local cap on selling generated energy back to the grid? I know we're capped out right now, but is this the time and opportunity to talk about that increase? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very good question, and something that we hear a lot from our customers is on the cap. I talked about earlier the relationship between the government of Northwest Territories that sets energy policy, and we as the organization that delivers energy and that policy. The government of Northwest Territories Energy Division and Infrastructure, they are conducting a review on that exact number right now. I believe they're close to bringing that forward to standing committee and talking about how the government process works, and that process for discussing about that cap, if it's 20% is appropriate or should be higher, that's more of a policy setting standpoint, not necessarily through the GRA process. But interveners, like I mentioned earlier, a general rate application is really an avenue for customers to ask any question they want about our organization, about the costs incurred to deliver power to our customers, and to make sure that we're spending our customers' money as appropriately as we can. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Kolakowski.
Thank you. This one again is a little bit more of a future question, I guess, but currently at the federal government level, I know like the Minister of Canmore in his mandate letter includes things about getting all of Canada off of diesel, reducing greenhouse gases, reducing fossil fuel use and all of that. So I guess my question is, is there some sort of working group at NTPC with a big pie in the sky dream of having all sorts of renewables and no diesel backup so that we can actually see a reduction in costs for our residents? Because like you said, like the reduction we'll see even from the windmill is already accounted for and gone. So it's not like we're gonna have $20 less a month once it's running, it's already been spent, right? So I guess, again, back to pie in the sky, but will we ever see a reduction in rates at any time? And then also, what's the dream of getting off of diesel for NTPC?
Thank you, and I really appreciate that question. This is where I can get on my soapbox and talk about the future. We, as a company, as I mentioned earlier, we work closely with the government on what their priorities are. We're a crown corporation, we're an agency of the government. So they have an energy direction that they want to achieve by 2030, and that's even being accelerated by the federal government. All utilities across Canada are marching towards a net zero grid. We're not in a national grid, but we have a net zero grid by 2035. That's not that far away. I can tell you that speaking with my counterparts across the country, that's scary. Not so much for the BC Hydros and Manitoba Hydros and Quebec Hydros of the world, but SAS Power and all the utilities in Alberta, which is thermal generation. That's going to be a very, very difficult aspect for them to achieve. With regards to blue skying objects, the reason why I said I appreciated the question is because we have our strategic plan. We do have a strategic plan. It has two long-term goals. The first goal is to reduce the gap in the average electricity rate in Canada and what our customers in the Northwest Territories pays. There is no hiding the fact that we have high costs in the Northwest Territories. So our number one priority is to reduce that gap. The second priority that we have which is aligned with the government's climate change and energy policy, is to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from communities that produce predominantly by diesel generation or liquid natural gas. So those are the long-term goals. What we're planning on now is we want to take, that plan was developed in 2018. Unfortunately, like a lot of organizations and companies, along came this thing called COVID, which derailed a lot of our planning. And we were actually going to get back together as a senior leadership team in Hay River next week and start talking about how we want to get our mid and long-term plans. Well, now we're dealing with a flood situation in my community here. So we've delayed that a little bit, but we want to get there because as Belinda, that's in charge of our operation, she's always very, very, very conscious of talking to me about how are we going to get there mid, short term to get to that end goal. But those two long-term goals of reducing that gap and reducing our reliance on diesel, those are our long-term goals. How we get you there, that's what we're working on right now. Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none. Oh. Yes,
Yeah, just when is the time of the estimated?
could
time
you
it should be available?
step up to the mic there?
She's from the meeting, by the way. Right? So that's the second she is. That's-
Carly Shaw,
She's from
CBC.
CBC. They need to know she's from CBC. Okay. They need to know she's from CBC.
So,
Just for your information, the next question is coming from CBC.
yes,
Go ahead.
hi there. I didn't catch when was the estimated time of the wind turbine to be ready, up and ready?
Thank you. The commissioning date that we're looking at right now would be starting operating in January, hopes of operating fully by April of 2023.
Okay, and then I guess if I had a follow-up question, and it's a little off topic from that, but I just didn't know if there was any update on the oil spill that happened in April.
If we could keep the questions to the presentation, you could ask them at some other point. Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your presentation.
Good luck in Hay River.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to go look after trying to get my dad from trying to save his house right now, which is hard when he's dealing with a 70-year-old man that wants to save his house. But anyways, thank you very much for your time. Have a good evening. Enjoy it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is public question period. Any questions from the public? You didn't give her any questions?
I did not feed her any questions. Who's your favorite counselor?
I just wanted to point out as Councillor Devlin's daughter sitting there, so
Oh,
welcome to the meeting.
Welcome.
Item 6, adoption of the minutes. 6.1, the minutes of the April 13th, 2022 council meeting. The motion will be it resolved that a new council adopts the minutes of the April 13th, 2022 council meeting as presented. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Gallons and Councillor Merrill. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion's carried. 6.2, minutes of the April 25th and 27th council meetings. The motion is be it resolved, the Inuvik Town Council hereby adopts the minutes of the April 25th and 27th, 2022 council meeting as presented. A mover, Deputy Mayor Kulikowski, seconded by Councillor Devlin. Any discussion? Motion, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Almost got ahead of myself there. 7.1 is the action items list. Any questions? Right. 8.1. The Town of Inuvik fees and charges amendment. The motion is be it resolved, the Inuvik Town Council hereby approves amending the fees and charges policy FM.021 Schedule A is presented. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Devlin and Councillor Merrill. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. 8.2 was a recreation survey. Thank you very much, Lisa. It's very well presented. 8.3, Muskrat Jamboree Kiddies Carnival request for donation. Patricia, are you here to represent the?
I am, if there's any questions. I have nothing in particular to present, but if there's any questions, I will do my
Thank you
best to
very much.
answer them.
So the motion will be it resolved that Inuvik Town Council hereby approves an in-kind donation for the Muskrat Jamboree for the 2022 Kiddies Carnival taking place June 4th and 5th, 2022, to include the following: donation of the Jim Cooey Park Events Pavilion, power, sound system, and portable stage as per the application for donation. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Merrill and Councillor Gallons. Discussion, questions. Deputy Mayor Kulikowski.
Just one quick fix there. It should be Chief Jim Cooey Park.
I'm sorry.
It should be Chief Jim Cooey Park. Not just Jim Cooey.
It's in the written one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I thought I said that. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming, Patricia.
You're welcome.
10.1 was the capital projects report. 10.2, the financial report. The motion coming out of those is be it resolved that Inuvik Town Council hereby adopts the following staff reports as presented. Item 10.1, capital projects report. Item 10.2, the financial report. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Devlin and Councillor Merrill. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Information items, we had the Aurora Research Institute, various research projects. Item 12, council concerns, anything tonight? Councillor Harder.
This one, Jesse, this one. No, Jesse, this one.
New technology.
Thank you, Your Worship. Excuse me. I got a concern about yield signs and crosswalks in town. We've got a real issue with
council, the amount of kids and families that are coming out of council. I think that we need to install something there to make the public aware. I saw a family just about get sideswiped the other day. Vehicles don't slow down. They're doing the speed limit, if not more, and nobody stops. They just go and go and go. And a second question is, we had a sidewalk bench at the end of Mackenzie that seems to have been leveled. That's another concern that maybe we should look at getting fixed as well. Thank you.
SAO Hood, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Mayor Wood. I would like to get a little clarification from Councilor Harder when he talks about, there are signs there now currently. Are you asking about enforcement? Or I just need a little clarification, I'm sorry on that.
Thank you. No, I haven't seen any signs there. But there are signs there. Okay. Enforcement, public, and just some public awareness that this is a high traffic area for kids. The public just doesn't, they just don't stop. There's no enforcement behind that.
In answer to your second question, yes, we are aware of it. It was a question of a bunch of snow got piled on top of it, and when they went to move away from it was buried. Unfortunately, we are looking at getting it once summer comes along. As far as right now, it's a little hard to put it in there right now, but we are aware of it, and have been for a while.
Thank you.
Thank you for your first concern. I'll make note of it myself. We have nothing for in camera. Sorry, Councilor Gallons.
No problem, Your Worship. It's a bit of a late concern, but kind of in line with what Councilor Harder mentioned about signage. I noticed as well in some of the streets where there's hills over the utilidors, with people not walking on the side of the street, and you've got oncoming traffic on either side, and sometimes folks aren't slowing down or not being cautious on some of these hills where you can't see someone until you actually come over the hill. And if our director could maybe do a quick scout and identify some of those hills where the line of vision is pretty bad, and then see about signage up there as well, something that folks don't slow down.
We will take note of that, see what we can do. Thank you for raising it. Any other concerns? We have nothing for in camera tonight, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Councilor Merrill, all those in favor? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was very exciting.